Welcome to the heretics and blasphemers, to the seekers of the unseen. You who have stepped beyond the borders of the conventional, we welcome you into the shadowed corridors of the occult and the profane. This is Unsanctioned, where the forbidden becomes knowledge and the boundaries are meant to be broken.
I am La Hechicera Len, who stands at the crossroads where spirits dwell and whisper secrets. Here we explore the symbols, spells, and stories that society fears to acknowledge.
And I am Sebastian, the sorcerer of annihilation. I believe in tearing down the false walls of illusion and embracing chaos. Together, we're here to shatter taboos and illuminate what lurks in the dark corners of folklore and magic. Welcome to another episode of Unsanctioned. Today, we'll explore the deals we make with spirits, the promises that can shape our lives, and the risks involved. Before we get into it, don't forget to leave a like or rating wherever you listen to Unsanctioned. It helps us to reach more people looking to travel down the path less taken.
And don't forget to join us over on Patreon at patreon.com/unsanctioned, where we have 3 tiers for you to embark upon: the heretic, the malefactor, and the blasphemer.
We have an email. Use it. We want to hear from you. Send us your stories, your experiences, questions, and more to podcastunsanctioned@gmail.com. I'm Sebastian, the sorcerer of annihilation, and you can find me on social media at sebas_the_storm on Instagram, Threads, and TikTok, where I offer services like divination, spellwork, and sorcery for hire. Or check out my tattoo page for occult and witchcraft oriented tattoos and ritualized tattoos at sebas.tat, T-A-T-T.
I am La Hechicera Len. You can find me on Instagram and Threads at hechicera_Len. Okay, so let's get into it.
Let's get into it. We love a smooth transition. Okay, so we are talking today about spirit pacts and spirit bargains. The bargaining side, the negotiation side, we're going to kind of barely touch upon because we do have a full episode just on negotiating and bargaining with spirits. But with that being said, spirit pacts. What are spirit pacts? How are they made? What are these things? Why do we have them? Why is it important? All these different things we're gonna talk about because I'm sure you've heard, especially nowadays, we hear a lot more about spirit pacts and their importance. But there are plenty of books on them as well, and so we are going to dive into them a little bit more today. So today, let's talk about what a spirit pact is. So spirit pacts, or I completely spaced on whatever word I was going to use right there. Moving on. Spirit pacts are agreements that are made between us as practitioners and spirits, often involving promises, exchanges. There's like paperwork involved, signatures, the whole 9 yards. And these are things that are used to result in an outcome, right? So with this relationship, you can utilize it for different things, right? So some pacts are for one specific outcome. Some are for like a lifelong agreement in which we can, me and said spirit that I have signed a pact with, can create certain results or certain things within our relationship in various ways, and we'll dive more into that later. And these concepts have roots in like folklore and spiritual traditions worldwide. So these pacts are like negotiations, right? I think most of the time, and emphasis on most of the time, you can negotiate what is going to be in this pact. And that is something to take into account. We think of stories like that come forth a lot, and I'm sure Len can think of a lot more than I can. But things like the Faustian legends, where the man trades his whole for like knowledge and power and control of things and blah blah blah, or the tales of witches and devils, plural devils, striking deals for favors or abilities or whatnot to make them a witch, or musicians selling their soul for fame and skill. So these are things to think about when we kind of come into this idea of spirit pacts and bargains. Is there anything you want to add, Len?
Yeah, like you basically said it. They're like contracts. There's a lot of legal, not legal, but like it feels that way. It feels like a legal document. There's a lot of things that the spirits may expect from you, and there are things that maybe you're not willing to do that they'll expect from you. But that goes into like the negotiating aspect, which like you said, we'll get into it at another time.
Absolutely. And that was the word I was looking for, contract. I don't know why I couldn't think of that word at the time, but contracts is definitely going to be something that is interchangeable with the word like spirit pact. You have these spirit contracts as well. And so these are definitely things to think about. So, um, yeah.
One more thing, sort of mostly relevant to the conversation. Have you seen the show on Netflix, Fall of the House of Usher?
Not yet. I've
Okay.
watched the
Okay.
other parts of the series, like The Haunting of Hill House, The Haunting of Bly Manor. I have not watched The Fall of the House of Usher yet.
Okay.
Um, I need to
Yeah.
because
There. Yeah.
there's an iconic scene and it that I'm absolutely obsessed about. I don't even know the context, but I think she's portraying death and she's talking about like how humans can like solve everything, but like they just don't, and like blah blah blah, and like, oh, such a good monologue. I've seen that clip. And that's it.
There's also a good representation of a contract with a spirit in that show. Like the whole plot is around that contract. Anyway, you should
Writing
watch
this
it.
down. I'm watching this.
Yeah.
What was it called again?
Fall of the House of Usher.
Right. Okay.
Girl, wake the fuck up.
Oh, literally. Okay. Okay. Cool. So go to watch that, listeners, as well. Let's see. Okay. Cool. 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 Yeah. No, I think there are like a few movies and shows that actually capture spirit packs really well. I think one of my favorites was like first early season of the new Sabrina, where she goes to get her familiar. Like, ugh, so good.
Hmm.
Because my favorite part about that was how almost realistic it was, in the sense of like as a practitioner, I think, and I'm not saying it doesn't happen, but like if you're doing like this specific type of ritual to form a spirit pact with a familiar, sometimes you're like there and you do the whole thing and you can definitely feel like a presence. And you're like, okay, cool. But you can't physically see anything, like nothing's actually happening. And then you're like, okay, maybe this didn't work. And then you go home and suddenly there's like a spirit there and you're like, oh fuck. um, and it succeeded.
And the spirit's
Um,
like, I was watching you the whole time.
yeah. It was like checking you out, seeing if we're going to be a good fit, seeing if this is actually something we both want to do, if you're serious or just fucking around. Um, really great. Sabrina was so good until it started getting weird. Um, Unfortunately.
Yeah, those
Anyway,
last few seasons were just weird as fuck.
yeah, I mean, I still watched them, but I was like, okay, this is just becoming like really cringy and painful to watch. Can we go back to the first season, please? Um, That one was really good. We also see like temporary packs in my favorite show, The Magicians. We've talked about them before, in like the tattoo that's like on the back. So that's like a really good reference to like a temporary spirit pact.
Yeah, there's do you remember when the Beast and Julia contract with each other?
Yes, that's
Um
also a really good one because they actually have to write the contract down.
yeah. They're going through all like the loopholes, potential loopholes. There's so many clauses in it. Like it's back to back like a few pages.
Yeah, no, and that's honestly, at least for me and the spirits that I work with, is really how it can be. And we'll dive into that because, like, my spirits definitely found a loophole in one of our contracts,
Mm.
and it always goes back to my alleged situation with a flood. Uh, so we'll talk about that later. maybe in the post show, we'll see, we'll see. Um, but yeah, so like, these are definitely things that we'll talk about in regards to like making pacts is like clauses, making sure there aren't loopholes, um, things like that. These are all things that we have to take into account as practitioner because this is a relationship, but just as with any like legal relationship that you're creating, and we are going to use the term legal throughout this episode. We don't actually mean like law abiding, legal, any of that. It's just like it literally has the same nature as like a legal document almost. Like, there is the signature of both parties. Both parties have to agree. Both parties can have input on what is in the document, what needs to be removed from the document. You can have a representative, your lawyer, essentially be there. You can also have like your notary essentially. So these are all things that like are reasons why we can use this umbrella term of like quote unquote legally um around spirit packs and spirit contracts because it just reflects it so well, like down to like some of the tiniest details. It's like, okay, this is literally um how this works is like almost like the same with a lawyer or like any kind of legal document and legal process. And so, side note, it might help you to have a lawyer on your team for stuff like this. Uh, just saying, because
I
they
was
already
gonna,
know all
yeah.
that.
Yeah, because I remember when on the Frightful Howls when they did an episode on, I think it was like uh traveling or relocating and things that you might need to do with your spirits. Part of it was like pulling out the legal documents saying that your name is on the lease or that it's like in your name, being like, hey, showing it to the house spirit, hey, I live here now. We gotta be on good terms, okay? So like here's the proof, and they'll acknowledge it, like they'll respect the legality of it.
Ugh, and like I can get into paperwork so much because one thing is that people don't realize is if they live in a house or an apartment with roommates or a significant other, anybody whose name is signatured onto the lease, then there is a circumstance and condition involving things around, like, for example, protections around a house, protections and wards around an apartment are now affected by this other person who is on the lease because of the signature. And people don't realize that. And it creates this loophole that creates a lot of gaps in people's wards and practices and protections. Um, but I digress. Get a lawyer on your team because they already know all this like legal jargon. They know all the right words to use. They know how to write a document in your favor. Mine specializes in negotiations. That's like literally was their entire thing when they were alive. So thanks, stepdad. Anyway, um,
I love that you corrected yourself. That was their thing.
because to me it still is.
Yeah.
But right, I forget to other people. Right, past tense. Not for me. Uh, so that's like something definitely to take into account when you're like talking about this. But we've talked a lot about this. We've talked about a few like social media, mainstream media examples. But let's talk about like how did these spirit packs work? How can we create them? All those things. So to you, Len, how does a typical process of forming a pact look with as much that you can share about it?
Um, to be completely honest, the way that you have described, the way that you've explained before, pacting with a spirit, I have only experienced that once before. And that was recently with, which I can't talk about, but the spirit that I'm working with through this. Um, Only time I've ever done it. And they're very particular about like, we're going to get this in writing. We're going to get this, like, it has to be done this way. And I'm like, I've never experienced this before. Because most of my it's been like with folk saints or saint spirits. They're very like, hey, I'll show up. Like, this expectation. It's not like they don't really demand it in writing as much, so they're fine. Almost not going to say that they're fine with whatever, but they're almost basically, yeah,
Almost.
yeah.
Almost, but not really.
Um,
Almost.
but with like the pact making itself, of course, you need to make sure that they're there and listening, um, and that they accept it. Um, there is a little bit of sitting and negotiating, being like, "Hey, I know you want this, but I can't guarantee that." Or instead of this, let me do this. Sometimes they'll agree, sometimes they won't. You just kind of have to play around. Not play around, but like, well, yeah,
No, absolutely. I think, in that regard too, like, first of all, that spirit that you're talking about feels very by the book. In just the small interaction that I've had, yes, you do have to make sure that the spirit is there. So I guess obviously the first thing that you want to do is okay, there's a few things before we start even getting into making the pact, figuring out what spirit you're working with, figuring out if that's a spirit you should be working with, figuring out if this spirit wants to work with you. Um, these are all things to think about as well when like before you do it, because like you can't just go around summoning random spirits and like this is like the first time you're interacting and being like you're gonna sign a contract with me. Like, bitch, you are a stranger. Who are you? um
they don't like
like,
that.
no, yeah. Some might be okay, especially if it's like a more temporary type of contract, like something that's like one and done. Like you help me with this, I get the result. That's it. We're done. You can go on your way, um, which is fine. Um, but some spirits will be like, "Who are you, and why are you trying to bind me to this contract?" Because remember, like the word that's used in legal terms is that you are legally bound by said contract when you sign it, correct? Bound. You are bound to this. You are binded. So this is the same as like any kind of binding work. Okay, you are bound. Um, so it's not something to take lightly. Okay, so spirit pacts and spirit contracts are not to be taken lightly. And this isn't Pokemon. Okay, we're not here to catch them all. Um, Granted, you might have a lot, okay? I'm a bitch to talk, okay? Because I have
I
so
was
many
gonna
fucking
say,
spirits. For me, bitch, I do catch them all. Um, but by the nature of my practice, it just happens to be that I have to have a lot of spirits, okay? But then again, I'm not out here trying to collect every spirit that I come across, okay? These are spirits that I've collected over my 10 years of practice. Some of them, our contracts are done, but they have still decided to stay. There are various other spirits who are still within contract. And I've had spirits who were in contract who have finished their contract and left. Um, but once you figure all those little details out, like what spirit you want to summon, is this a spirit that likes contracts? Because there are historical, like folklore references to certain spirits that do not like to be bound in contracts. And if you are doing those types of spirits, you have to trick them into signing the contract. So good luck with that. Um, it is possible, but good luck with it. Because if they figure it out, you're fucked.
On a scale from 1 to 10, my friend, you're fucked.
um, and then, making sure that the spirit wants to work with you, right? So building a relationship is super important in that regard. And then once you're ready to make this contract, I find that it's best to think about this. This isn't something that you're just like, I woke up today and I feel like making a contract with this spirit. Let's go figure it out right here, right now. Take some time to meditate on this, maybe a few days. I think 3 days is a good amount of time if you have the time to truly sit and think for like a while for 3 days. If not, take a week. Take a week at least to like think about this, because this is going to require work on your part as well. Okay. This isn't like you just sign this thing and the spirit does everything and you just get to sit back and relax. There is stuff that will be required of you. This is a contract. both parties are engaged, which means both parties have responsibilities to uphold said contract. Um, so now you have decided to do this. You are now invoking the spirit or summoning it in whichever way fits your practice, your traditions. Um, and different traditions will have slight variations on this, but if we're just talking about like a generic blueprint of a contract, calling forth the spirit, making offerings to really appease the spirit and make sure that it's like, hey, like I definitely want to work with you. I'm down to sign this contract. But also making sure that the spirit that you're calling forth is who it is, which is part of why it's you don't just summon a spirit for the first time and have it sign a contract because it could be someone else pretending. So not every spirit is okay. I think there's this really big paranoia about like what people call trickster spirits and this negative association with them of them like masking or morphing or shapeshifting into whatever spirit you're summoning and tricking you and like doing that. Not everything is, but they do exist. Okay, so you do have to be careful. So this is why building a relationship is important because if you summon the spirit and something feels off, you're going to be like, "Ooh, you're not actually who you say you are," and now you have to banish it and then do the whole thing all over again. So that's something to take into account. But once your spirit answers that you're trying to form this pact with, then a series of steps needs to occur, right? And like Len said, this is where like the negotiation happens. This is where all that happens. Um, this is a ritual. So if you remember in our first episode, rituals have three parts. You have the separation, the liminality, and the reintegration. The separation is that you and the spirit are separate and you're coming into this ritual to sign something. The liminal is that negotiation phase, and the reintegration is the signature. So once you've signed it, that you and that spirit are now bound together. So you guys are different from when you started. So that would be the reintegration phase. Um, but during the liminal point, you guys are negotiating, you guys are talking, you guys are deciding. And sometimes, even in that exchange, your spirits might be like, okay, well, when we sign the signature, it's going to be like this. Okay, it's going to be through this, which could be things like um, blood mixed with other materials, such as ink, herbs, and whatnot. And it can be very specific. It can be your spit. It can be your thumbprint or a fingerprint of some kind. It can be a um, through like your voice, your word, because your word is power, and your word is binding. Especially as a practitioner, your word has a lot of power compared to like a average person. Um, But also, when you can also do this, like, tattooed. Some spirits will require the, ink to be the signature upon the skin. A piercing can also be the bounding, action. There are a number of different ways in which this signature might occur. Um and the process of that will be dependent upon the spirit. So just listen, negotiate. If they're like, you get your face tattooed, and you're like, I can't do that for work. We're gonna just do a signature. You have to stand firm with some boundaries. Okay, some spirits, especially like a more mercurial like spirit that's just like loves to mess around and just be funny would definitely do some shit like that, and you have to be like, "No, I know you're not being serious. Um, let's just do a signature." So that's something to take into account. Um, with that being said, once you guys get to that point of understanding and like everything's been agreed upon about what's in the document, what shouldn't be in the document, blah 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 blah, um, then you guys perform the signature in whatever way that is. Um, Something to note is that not every spirit pact is like a physical document. Okay. Sometimes it is through word of mouth only, and it's because your word should be binding, your word should be serious, you should keep your word. These are all things to think about. And then if you're doing it through a physical medium, there are accounts of spirits actually signing on their own behalf. but sometimes you have to be like, okay, well then I allow you to channel through me. I allow a minor possession while I hold this pen, so that way, and you can show me what your signature is, what your symbol is, um, and your name, and I will sign on this spot for you, um, on your behalf to represent you. Um, which is like kind of like in legal documents when you have like a stand-in who is representing whoever's supposed to be signing. Um, it's like that, but you are the person doing it. You are the conduit for the spirit who's going to be physically signing. Um, and that is like one way to do it. There are a number of like other things, like I said, within your traditions, within your practices. Different spirits are all are known to have like different forms of pacts and different methods of forming this pact. But if we really look at the general picture, this is what it looks like. And there are going to be things that are like in the document that will be like, okay, I promise to do this. Like, I promise to give you fresh water every day. Um, but you also have to do this, right? Which means if they fail to do what's said in the document, then you don't give them that item as well. Because the document, depending on your guys' decision, you can make things so serious that you're like, the second that you don't do that, or the second that I don't do what I said, the document's null and void, our relationship is over, or there are consequences to the actions of breaking a document, right? So, for example, if you break a document, uh, break a bind a like your lease, right? In an apartment or renting something, you break your lease. There are repercussions, right? Whether that's financially, legally, or whatnot, depending on the circumstance, there is a consequence. So that can be something that's taken into account when you're doing the packs as well.
So we've kind of gone over like the general making of a pact. Are there other things that should be taken into account? Maybe, um, of course, magic is not safe. So what would potential risks be with for people doing this?
So absolutely, right? Like making pacts and contracts is not without its dangers, right? Um, we've already talked about one example is like a spirit tricking you, um, pretending to be somebody else. These are all things to think about. So I always go into making spirit contracts with like talismans hidden in my pocket. Um, is that a talisman in your pocket, or are you just happy to see me? Um, but um, okay, so yeah, I'll come in with like some talismans, like if just in case if I feel like the spirit is being subversive or basically like manipulative or being off or like not really showing signs of it being its true that exact spirit that I'm trying to summon, or if it's feeling like this spirit is kind of giving me like that it's trying to trick me. Like this isn't actually the spirit I'm trying to summon. This is something pretending to be that spirit. Or in some cases, if the spirit is being uh kind of aggressive towards me, right? Like I have talismans for that, right? So things to reveal true nature and things to subjugate spirits are always something that I will have with me. Because spirits can be unpredictable, right? So not only can spirits be unpredictable, but the promises they make can be broken or misunderstood. And what that means, because we are talking about binding contracts, is we'll get into that. First, spirits are unpredictable. Okay. If you walked up to a stray dog, do you think it's going to know the command sit? I'm not saying that spirits are like dogs, but I'm just giving you an example. And like if you run into a mountain lion in the forest, do you think if you're like, oh, here, kitty, kitty, it's gonna just like purr and let you pet it? Probably not. Okay, you have to know how to work with these types of spirits. Okay, so if you're working, trying to just, for example, if you're a beginner, maybe calling forth a extremely wrathful spirit may not be the best option for your first contract to sign with. Um, Maybe not great. And so there are certain spirits that are just known to be unpredictable. what we classify as like a trickster spirit can be extremely unpredictable. And trickster spirits have their place. They're very beneficial, but at the end of the day, the tricks are usually meant to teach us lessons to help us grow. But they're still tricksters, right? I find in certain traditions, not mine, wind spirits can be pretty unpredictable because the wind is constantly changing. Weather spirits in general, okay, super unpredictable. The weather's unpredictable. Um, with that being said, other types of spirits that might be unpredictable, chthonic spirits, some of them, it's weird. Chthonic spirits are either like unpredictable or extremely orderly, and extremely organized. So you get one or the other. There's never an in between. um, Now, what we mean by promises can be broken or misunderstood. Promises can be broken is where we talked about loopholes. Okay. If you're not careful and the spirit is like, well, I figured out this loophole in your legal document, so I can do this and I can get away with it and not fulfill said promise because you didn't use the proper vocabulary, the proper statements, the proper whatever, you didn't put the proper clauses. Um, they're gonna take that. Okay. Um, Now, misunderstood. This is something that should be done when you're calling forth the spirit before you start negotiating is like, are we understanding each other? Because sometimes there's a language barrier. Okay. Not all spirits speak in the same way. We've talked about before how some spirits are very abstract. It's very confusing when a spirit starts talking in shapes and concepts. Some spirits speak in ideas. Some spirits speak in sounds. Some spirits speak like us. Some spirits speak in different languages. Um, so these are things that we have to take into account. And so it also helps to find somebody who can really help with that. So as a spirit who helps with negotiations, they can help translate things across the board so that way me and whatever spirit I'm trying to um, make a pact with are on the same page. Because without my negotiating spirit, I'm gonna have to make sure that we are understanding each other, right? And if we are misunderstanding each other, like a phrase that okay, for example, right? Um, let's say I was writing this contract in English, but the person I was signing with only spoke Mandarin, right? There are words in Mandarin that don't exist in the English language. We can find like similar ones or things that come close, um, but in reality, there isn't anything that directly translates across. There are words like that across the board of multiple languages, not just Mandarin, but also French and Arabic and all these other languages um, that don't translate across the board. So if we take that into account when we're creating these packs and make sure not and are not making sure that our spirit that we're trying to contract with is understanding us, then they're going to be like, I didn't understand this. I don't know what I'm signing. So maybe they won't sign, or they'll sign not understanding really what they're getting themselves into. And same with you. Like if it's the opposite way, like you're not really understanding the spirit, but you just want this contract, so you're just gonna sign anyway, and not reading the fine print, and suddenly you have to make like daily offerings of $1,000 or more. Like good luck. um, so these are things that we have to take into account, and also like whether or not this spirit is wanting to or not, right? Because we've talked about unpredictable spirits, but even if a spirit isn't unpredictable and you're trying to force it into a binding vow, essentially, um, it's not going to end well for you, right? And some spirits will take vengeance upon the person who breaks a contract. So take that into consideration, especially spirits around justice and like equality. So if you were to like break the contract, they're going to turn that vengeance around on you and maybe the people close to you because you broke the contract, right? And that is like super big and a taboo. Speaking of taboos, some spirits might give you taboos as part of the contract. And that's something to think about as well, whether or not you can perform and actually stick to the taboos that are given in various ways. So these are things that definitely can be taken into account, right? Like these actual dangers that may be physical or not, the ethical considerations that, like, are you truly aware of what you're agreeing to? Is the spirit truly aware of what they're agreeing to? And taking the precautions and protective measures to ensure that everybody's on the same page when it comes to these contracts. So I guess the next thing would be like we can talk about some folklore, notable cases, stories, things that are brought up in um, different types of myths or coming around again. Like I already said, folklore, because a lot of lessons can be taught in these stories. Some of them are just meant to like scare the fuck out of you, which you should be sometimes. A little bit of fear is healthy. But also like fuck around and find out. So I think, Len, can you tell us a bit about some folklore or stories that we can kind of go over?
Off the top of my head, I can't really think of anything besides like, I mean, what came to mind was the deal that Orpheus makes with Hades, um, to get Persephone out. Um, Not that, well, I guess,
Eurydice.
yeah, Eurydice. Yep. I'm not, hold on. Cut the cameras. Cut the cameras. When Orpheus is getting Eurydice out, um, because my next thought was gonna say, well, Hades was like the goal wasn't to trick. Oh, actually, you know what? There is a story similar. Um, when Quetzalcoatl goes down to Mictlan to retrieve the bones to make people. Uh, Mictlantecutli is like, I mean, yeah, you can, but also like, why the fuck are you here? Like, go away. And it's like, sure, you can take them. You can take
What are
it.
you doing in my house?
What are you doing in my house? Very that. Um, and he's like, sure, you can take it. Yeah, that's fine. But or no, actually. Oh my god, there's so many different parts of that I'm forgetting. Like he's like, "Yes, you can take them if you can make sound with this instrument." And it's a sealed conch. And he's like, "You have to make music with it." So he just puts bees in it to it was meant to trick him and to trap him. But he was able to trick him back sort of. And then he's finally going to leave. Miklan Tekutli is pissed, so he sends spirits to go um trap him. They dig a pit so that Quetzalcoatl will fall in, and he does, but they end up getting out. Um yeah.
And then they get our bones, but something happens. I don't remember what, and that's why we're all different
Yeah,
sizes,
when
right?
Quetzalcoatl fell in the pit, some bones shattered and some broke. So that's why some people are shorter, some people are taller. Um, but yeah,
Also, like coming back to the or Eurydice and Orpheus, um, it's funny because like if people don't really know the myth, they think it's Hades who's like the one who deals out the pact, but it's Persephone. Persephone's usually the one, at least in my experience and my knowledge, Persephone's usually the one who's actually dealing out the shit. Like Persephone is the one who actually, when you die, she's like, actually, this is going to be your punishment. Hades isn't that. Like between the unpredictable and the super organized and structured, Hades is the super organized and structured. Persephone is the chaotic, unpredictable. And she's in charge of your shit. So she's the one who's dealing like after like everything and like in special cases, she's the one who's like, actually, you're gonna do this, blah 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 blah. Hades is the one who's just doing the paperwork and handling finances. Um, so it's kind of funny to me when a lot of people are like, "Oh my god, like Hades, blah 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 blah." Like, I mean, if you're gonna have a spirit on your side for negotiations, there is a epithet of Hades who's really good for that. Especially the one who handles like contracts and money. um, really great, fantastic. Would not recommend Persephone because Persephone is the unpredictable one who would be like, "Well, there's a loophole." Like, yeah, like most people don't realize that.
Yeah, I wasn't aware of that. That's interesting.
And I only know that because one of my close friends is a devotee of both Hades and Persephone. And like that's their entire thing. They'll be on the show at some point. Um, but yeah, and I was like, I didn't even know this. Um, there's also an epithet of Hades who's known as like to be like super hot and sexy. Um,
Love that.
so fantastic, go off. But I think like in folklore too, we hear a lot of them, right? Like in traditional witchcraft, the witches getting their familiar or signing the devil's book is like a contract and pact. We've talked before about like like the traditional witchcraft of like the toadstone or like the toad bones and the cat bones and killing the animal and then getting the bones and throwing them in a river and meeting the devil and then you become a witch. That's one method as well. The crossroads is a wonderful place to make pacts in which all directions are present, so anything is possible. The liminality of that. If you're going to make your contract at a 7-Eleven at 3 a.m., I'm not going to stop you.
If it works, it works.
If it works, it works. Um, I think too, um, we've talked about like, traditions in that case, but one of the ones that I really love that kind of like really made me think to be careful of like what I put in my packs is the story of Robert Johnson, right? So Robert Johnson is the blues musician. Let me just make sure that my information's correct. Yes. Um, so he's part of what's called the 27 Club, which is like people who die at that age. Um, and so um, it's said and rumored that this blues musician went to couldn't play guitar. Like honestly, was super bad. Um, and he wanted to be a really big musician, but just did not have the skill or capability to do so. And so at some point in his life, he is rumored to have gone to his crossroads um, and met a man who was the devil and sold his soul in order to become a great blues musician. And he did. However, he started to, because he wasn't careful with his pact, something happens. I can't remember if he breaks the pact or he just didn't know that there was something involved in the pact. But the people he loves start to die brutally, um, like horribly. And it gets to the point where it just like gets crazy. He starts to go a little mad. And it depends on like what story you're like hearing about this through, but the one I know is that he starts to go crazy and then he starts to lose his fame and dies at 27. So that is like one story that I know about selling your soul at the crossroads. Um,
I
yeah.
want to know what was in that contract that allowed the devil to get away with that. Or what wasn't in the contract. Like, what did you have to include to make sure that that didn't happen?
This is, yeah, number one. I would love to know what the contract was. Number two, this tells me that like this definitely wasn't the devil. This was a devil. Because I don't personally think that the devil would just start slaughtering your family Final Destination style for no reason. Um, doesn't really fit the bill in my case, at least through the devil, like the devil that I know. Um, doesn't really fit the bill. um, but you know who I could see doing some shit like that? The Christian God.
Yeah. But I mean, like, Tezcatlipoca has done that. Like
Right.
there are stories because the devil I'm familiar with absolutely would.
Right.
So I'm just like, hold on, we got to be careful here.
Right. 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 The devil versus a devil.
Hmm.
Right. That's like going to be dependent on practice and tradition.
Yeah, yeah,
Um,
yeah.
but I have to agree. Tezcatlipoca would do some shit like that.
Like there's a story where he like the Pied Piper, like I've told you this before, Pied Piper style, got a bunch of people up to the mountain, made them do ceremony for him, and then killed them after, just for fun, just because he wanted to.
I
Um,
think my favorite one is the story after that where he like has the little animaton like doll, but it's
yeah.
actually the other god. And then he's like people are trampling each other and killing each other to get to see this, and he's like, y'all dumb bitches, don't y'all see we're doing some crazy shit? Stone us, kill us. And they do, and then his dead body, he's still talking, dead, and they can't move the body, and it's like releasing poisonous fumes and killing people,
And
and
he's
he's
like,
like,
try harder, try
try
harder.
harder. It's like so fucking funny to me. He's like, no, sing a song. And it's just like
Sing me a song, it'll
dead
work.
corpse.
Yeah.
While people are dying. Yeah. Definitely Tezcatlipoca. I could see doing some shit. Given the area that is said that Robert Johnson performed this pact at, wouldn't be surprised if Tezcatlipoca was the one who showed up.
Hmm.
Because it is the South.
Yeah.
Um,
How far
which
south?
pretty far south.
Well, here's the thing. No. Well, it's rumored. I don't know if it's confirmed, so don't quote me on this, but it's rumored that the land that the Mexica were traveling from was actually much farther north originally than we thought to be. To the point that it could be Utah. Um, yeah. Like
I was wrong. It's
there's a
not
weird.
that far south. It's Mississippi.
Okay. Okay. Um, because I know that I saw online some weird Mormons believing that like, oh, because there was a temple to Quetzalcoatl in Utah, that this is a sign that Jesus was here. Like Quetzalcoatl is Jesus. And it's like shut the fuck up.
So shut when you think about it.
Shut the fuck up.
Yeah. Yeah.
No, truly, Mormons, they're a different breed.
Yeah.
Yes. Quetzalcoatl
But
is Jesus. Absolutely. Go ahead.
there was one other thing that like people like, yes, you can be tricked when it comes to pacts, but you can also be forced into a pact by spirits. I think of like, I'm not super familiar with the folklore, but they're like spirits, and I think this is more like the traditional witchcraft that comes from Europe, um where I'm not even going to say that. I don't even know if that's right. I'm not going to say a place. I just know of the story. Um where the king and queen of the witches will go out on a hunt and pull people from their sleep and force them to join their covens and join the hunts. Um, I have heard of that also happening on Walpurgisnacht on May's Eve. Yeah.
um, I think it's, yeah. And I think too, like, listeners, these packs aren't always like done in like a way of like, oh, I have planned this out. I am in a situation where I can think clearly, blah, blah, blah. Sometimes it's life or death. And these packs are made. And unlike legal packs, this is still a standing pact. You can't be like, well, I wasn't in sound mind when I made this. They don't give a fuck. Um, and so, with that being said, like one example would be the one that is why I'm here today. So My mother had postpartum depression because the doctor almost killed her in a various ways when I was born. And then the nurse injected her with too much of one of the chemicals, so it threw off her brain. So she dived into extreme postpartum depression and was having thoughts of putting me in the microwave. Girl, I understand. Listen, me too. I also think of putting myself in the microwave. But so she was having these thoughts, and it got really serious. And my father, being the piece of shit that he was not helping. Um, it was actually his best friend who helped my mom through this. And my mom, in a dream, met the Virgin Mary, Our Lady of Guadalupe, and was like, "Listen, bitch, I don't want to stick my kid in the microwave. I have a severe like Pepsi addiction and dark soda addiction. I will stop drinking dark soda cold turkey if you let me live and let me keep my kid." Um, and so my mom woke up, immediately stopped drinking dark soda. Um, Ended up having to be put to sleep for 3 days to rebalance her body, and came out of it and was completely fine, and here I am. I didn't get stuck in the microwave. Um, yeah, so yay! Um, and now I'm here, and the horrors never stop. Um, but, um yeah, so, like, sometimes it is about survival, you know, have you if there are cases in which people are making pacts, in life or death situations. One of those spirits that typically that happens with is one that we're both devoted to, Santa Muerte, in which you are facing a life or death situation and you no longer know what to do, and she appears and she's like, "I have a contract. You can
I have
live.
some things for you to do.
Sign this."
Yeah.
Um, and sometimes you don't really have a choice. You are signing that paper. Um, and sometimes you do have a choice. Kind of like what we talked about. Like sometimes there isn't a choice and you're kind of tricked into signing. Uh, I've been tricked into signing. I said, wait, I've been tricked into signing. Story time. There was a very specific spirit associated with pomegranates. I won't say who. And at this time in my practice, in my life, I had never had a fucking pomegranate in my life. We were too fucking poor to ever have had a pomegranate in our house. Um, and it was just funny because, like, out of nowhere, this spirit started appearing. And I mean, everywhere. Yes, on my phone, yes, on my computer, but I would be walking by people on campus because I was at university at this time, and they would be talking about this spirit. Like they would say their name, they would say this stuff, they would like talk about them all the time, and I was like, okay, what the fuck is going on? Um, and I just did not understand what was happening, and I was having cravings for pomegranate. I've never had a pomegranate. I don't know what the fuck it tastes like. I wouldn't even know how to open a fucking pomegranate at that point of in time. So I was like, why the fuck am I having this craving? And so I was avoiding it for a really long time because in folklore, you know, if you eat pomegranate, you're tied to the underworld. And at the time, I was not devoted to anything related to death. Um, and I was very like, that seems scary. No thanks. Um, which, if you know me, is kind of funny. Um, but one day, me and my best friend wake up and we go to the cafeteria for the students to have breakfast. And they happen to have my favorite, which is like French toast and like fruit and stuff. And there on a plaque says blueberry syrup. So I take it and put it on my stuff, and there's like little blueberries in there. I go sit down and I take a bite, and I'm suddenly hear a woman laugh. And it is like this, like, not like an evil laugh. It's like, haha, I got you. I tricked you. laugh. And my best friend hears it as well, and we're looking around because there's nobody in there. It's just us. Not even employees. It was literally just us because it was like a self-serve cafeteria. And so we're like, what the fuck? And then I'm like, this doesn't taste like blueberry. I get up, go to the plaque. It no longer says blueberry syrup. It says pomegranate syrup with pomegranates inside. And so that is how I got tricked into signing a contract with death and got dragged into necromancy in the underworld and all that. Persephone style.
Love that. That's wild.
Yeah, that was one of the craziest moments that I've had. And I've definitely had crazier, but at the beginning, that one was like, what the fuck? And also now I realize I can get tricked by spirits. And it was like like not only did I suddenly like dive into the deep end after that into death work and shit like that, which like, no, duh. Um, but it was just like a crazy experience to have where other people were kind of experiencing the phenomenon with me. So it wasn't like, oh, I'm just insane, this isn't actually happening, and then other people were like, why the fuck do I hear laughter? um, and these were people who were around me a lot, so had seen crazy shit happen, but it still would freak them out, with good reason. Um, so that was like a crazy experience. But yeah, like, like using folklore with certain spirits too. Like, let's say you are working with Persephone, right? And you want to devote yourself to her. Maybe you do eat the same amount of pomegranates seeds as she does on one of the like days that she either descends into the underworld or rises from the underworld, depending on what you're trying to do. Would be like a way to do it if you're going for like a big name brand spirit, as I say. Um, but Len, do you have any experiences that you can share about this or stories that you've heard?
I had a few, but like as soon as you asked me, my brain blanks. Not things personally, because I mean I already shared a little bit as much as I can. I don't even know how much of that is actually going to be in the show. Um, no, I can't think of anything else. Sorry.
I'm trying to think if I know any others. Just be aware, like listeners, the spirits can definitely ask for a variety of things. Some spirits may ask that they never touch light. Some spirits may ask that they only be in light. Some spirits may ask to be outside of your bedroom because they don't want to see you having sex. Some will want to watch um, and be involved in some way, shape, or form. Some will require certain items, certain materia. One of my spirits requires waters, so I give them different types of waters. I can't go into more detail than that. Um, certain spirits may require you to do certain things, right? So I know somebody whose part of their spirit pact is that they have to go clean a certain cemetery um, once a month, right? Um, and if they don't, there are consequences in which they have to perform certain rituals to remediate. Um, and so that is something to think about as well. Now, with that being said, you know, be careful in the way that you're making promises, right? Don't be like, I will give you something every week. Be like, and I will do my best to give you something at least once every other week. Be reasonable, okay? We knew someone, we won't say who was trying to make a certain pact with a certain type of spirit that we're both devoted to, and was just doing way too much than they were capable. Um, and fuck around and find out. Um, is all I'm gonna say. And especially with that spirit, you will fuck around and find out, as we've come to know. Um, and so be careful, right? Because like I said, some spirits will take these pacts, these contracts much more seriously than others, just come at it with an open mind, be prepared. You can always be like in the future, like, hey, something in our contract's not working. Can we sit down and rewrite this contract? Can we add a clause? And you can add clauses to contracts just like with legal documents and can be like, okay, we need to add a clause because we found a loophole, or hey, I didn't think about this when we were doing it. So let's add this. Um, but those are things to definitely take into account when talking about these types of spirit packs and spirit contracts. Perfect. Well, I think we have a show. So next week on Unsanctioned, we will explore and discuss an extension of this episode, and by default, an extension of our very first episode. Talking about spirit relations, we will actually dive into negotiations and spirits of negotiating, all in and of itself. So that way you can really get a hold of what we mean by like negotiating with spirits, how that can look, um, those boundaries, methods of doing it, the whole 9 yards. So we'll definitely deep dive into that. And again, I want to invite you as our listeners to please reach out. We have an email. Please use it. We want to hear from you. We want to hear what you think of the episode. We want to hear what you think of what we've had to say. We want to hear your own experiences, your own stories. And if you have a idea for an episode, please reach out. We had somebody ask us for a episode on the clairs or spiritual senses. So we will be doing an episode on that eventually. It's making its way into our list of episodes. So definitely don't forget to check us out over there. And don't forget to join us over at Patreon at patreon.com/ unsanctioned. UNS is capitalized, where we have 3 tiers for you to embark upon: the heretic, the malefactor, and the blasphemer. At the Heretic tier for $3 a month, you get access to the after show. You get your Q&A answered on air and access to our spellwork PDFs. The Malefactor tier at $8 a month, you get everything from the Heretic tier, access to our Discord server, group spellwork from Len, and your name read in the credits of the show. At the Blasphemer tier at $13 a month, everything from the first 2 tiers, group spellwork from me, Sebastian, and a small merch item set and live audience experiences in Riverside while we record. And we will be adding something new to one of these tiers starting next week. So keep an eye out for that. It's a really exciting offer about a weekly forecast done by Len with the Dona Lamat. So keep an eye out for that. We're really excited to start that.
And at this time, we would like to thank our Patreon supporters at the Blasphemer tier by name. Pablo Rodriguez, thank you for your support in walking with us on the path less traveled. And we want to hear from you. Share your stories, encounters with spirits, or your own forbidden rituals. You can find us on Instagram and TikTok at Unsanctioned Podcast, or email us directly at podcastunsanctioned@gmail.com.
Remember, what's considered taboo is often where strength and power lies. Stay unbound, stay unsanctioned.
Until next time, walk boldly into the shadows.
And let the forbidden be your guide.